Good evening, Whakaala Whaleatu, and welcome to our bulletin of BCN News for tonight. Leading the news tonight, the budgets of state-owned enterprises will be discussed at the next sitting of the Whanokepule scheduled for Wednesday next week. BCN News asked the Minister of Finance, Crossley Tatui, if the state-owned enterprises will be supporting the government's recurrent budget by way of dividends. The minister says that state-owned enterprises are also facing the same economic impacts, with tourism at a standstill, but that he and the government expect that these state-owned enterprises will continue to pay their taxes as required by law. That is another way the government can make money from its state-owned enterprises.
I think it's important to note that Telecom Niue Limited is a private company with a single shareholder, which I have under my responsibility, and it's still developing in terms of setting up its infrastructure and assets. It's a heavily capitalized operation. We do not have the number of people, the number of customers to be able to enable them to make a profit. But in terms of them meeting their tax obligations, it is my hope and want for them to do so as required by law.
Minister Tatui says that the Niue Philatelic and Numismatic Corporation would normally be able to support by way of paying dividends to the government's recurrent budget. But NPNC is also supporting other subsidiaries such as the Nonu Farm, the Niue Liquor and Bond Store, and other businesses under its responsibility. Telecom Niue, he says, is also not making much money with low number of customers. The budget for the Broadcasting Corporation will also be discussed with the state-owned enterprise budgets on Wednesday next week. For Year 13 students of Niue High School are calling on the Government of New Zealand to review its eligibility criteria for their scholarship selection, and also calling on the Niue government to review its policy of moving students up a year at Niue Primary School. The students told BCN News that their applications for a New Zealand scholarship for next year were unsuccessful because they did not meet the age requirement. Here's more. The four students, Kara Poihanga, Lani Head, Georgia Tuhipa, and Desio Pavihisioneholo, are some of Niue High School's top students. They are in their final year at the school and all have received high results in their NCEA Levels 1 and 2 qualifications, but their applications for the New Zealand scholarships were unsuccessful. These students are calling for the New Zealand and Niue governments to review the eligibility age of 18 because they say it is not fair that they are being penalised for a decision made by the primary school teachers about 10 years ago. Kara Poihanga, who has topped her class every year since starting Niue High School, said she and her family were very disappointed when she found out that her application was unsuccessful.
It's disappointing because we've gone through 7 years of education, and it's the same as everyone else in our year level, but because of our age we were not eligible for the scholarship.
Lani Head, who applied to study a Bachelor of Health Science, said that she was disappointed, but that it's important that they are all given equal chances at a scholarship because they worked very hard for it.
I think that it's important not to let the age of students to find the opportunity and their scholarship and how they can get it, and it's important that we all have equal chances and not to base it off our age, although we are the younger age, but more use it as an advantage for our generation to give back to Niue, and also take a review at the scholarship process to make it, as I'm sure like most of us, we were disappointed in our spending so much time and effort into our applications, or for it not to even get a positive response back. It's definitely disappointing.
These students are saying that they're in this predicament now because when they were in primary school at Year 3, they were told by their teachers that they had to move a year ahead to Year 4. Now that they've reached Niue High School in the final year, year 13 at Niue High School, they are faced with this issue where they are not eligible for a New Zealand scholarship because they are still 17 years old. The New Zealand scholarship eligibility requires the applicants to be 18 by the 1st of January 2022. Georgia Tuhipa, who applied to study law, is calling on both the Niue government and the New Zealand High Commission to review their policies.
For the sake of our students and our future generation and all of the students coming up, to review what has been set out for the scholarships, especially the eligibility age, because there are still heaps of students in years behind us that are coming up that will also go through the same problems. And I know that over time and in the past years, our teachers have been trying to find a way to work around the eligibility of the students. But I think I'd just like for our government to review that, and also our High Commission.
The only boy in the group, Desio Pavihisioniholo, who applied to study renewable energy engineering, says that the eligibility criteria should not be based on age, but on academic ability.
I'd like the criteria for eligibility to change. Not base it on age, but on the level of academic study. Instead of putting it to 18, they should, if they could qualify it, whoever has the highest level of academic study, like NCA level 3. That should be the qualification, not age, because at the end of the day, you're not going there because you're older. You're going there to learn.
BCN News contacted the Minister of Education and the Director of Education, but have yet to receive a response. After several attempts to contact the Education Department today, the Director finally answered, saying that she has been very busy with meetings this week, but she will be issuing a statement once she has received all the information. Meanwhile, parents have taken to BCN's Facebook sharing their children's experience at not being eligible for the New Zealand scholarships because of their age. The Office of the New Zealand High Commission, in an email to BCN News yesterday, said that they will be issuing a statement soon. There are only 2 scholarship opportunities for Niue students, the New Zealand Scholarship Program and the AusAid Scholarship Program. Students from Niue High School compete with all other adult applicants for the same scholarship opportunities. The Niue government haven't had a scholarship program in many years. Legal expert and constitutional law lecturer at Auckland University, Fuimaono Dylan Asafo, says that Niue's constitutional review must be more transparent. The legal scholar responded to a request from BCN News to provide expert legal opinion on the review of the Constitution, but this has not gone down well with some people. Fuimaono Asafo says that constitutional review is a critically important opportunity for the people of Niue to finally discuss the problems in Niuean politics for decades. It is also a rare chance to bring everyone in Niue together to explore and create solutions to these problems as a country. He continued to say that because constitutional reviews are so important and rare, they must be transparent and for the people to be given every opportunity to participate in the review. This also means that any documents and reports about the review must be publicly available and written in clear, detailed and thorough manner. 2 weeks ago, the chair of the Constitution Review Committee, Honourable Olaf Jacobson, said that the public consultations process is now over. It is now the business of the House. However, Asafo says it appears that the Constitution Review Committee is wasting this great opportunity for Niue, and the danger of wasting this opportunity is that the same problems will continue to burden Niue for generations. This will mean Niue will not be able to reach its full potential as a nation. Dylan Asafo's opinion piece, published on tvniue.com, has received mixed reviews. Some people are questioning why BCN News reached out to a Samoan and not a Niuean. Asafo was approached by BCN News several weeks ago, and he did suggest at the time to look for a Niuean legal scholar, but we were unable to find a Niuean who is a legal scholar working at any of the universities in New Zealand or at the University of the South Pacific. It is common practice when countries review their constitutions that the media seek out the expertise of legal scholars. Unfortunately, Niue does not have any working in that space in academia. The Niue government's constitutional advisor of nearly 30 years is a retired professor of law, Emeritus Professor Tony Angelo from Wellington's Victoria University. Meanwhile, the work of the Constitution Review Committee has received a boost with funding received from UNDP. Premier Dalton Tagilangi told News of the Week program on Friday last week that the government will be receiving $100,000 from UNDP to support the program of the review of the 1974 Constitution. And Minister of Infrastructure Crossley Tatui says that the government will conduct an audit of the use of diesel by Niue Power. Last year, the government said Niue Power had met half of its renewable energy target. BCN News hasn't been able, though, to get the right figures to confirm that there is a reduction on the purchase of diesel fuel for power generation on the island. The minister said that in the 2019 budget, Niue Power saved about $130,000 on diesel, and that trend is continuing with savings made. He told BCN News that the intentions to use more renewable energy is still on track.
I think the underlying belief from the beginning was that once we get the solar energy or renewable energy going, that we should be able to save up or more than $500,000 per annum. Unfortunately, it's not the case. That's because of the unreliable or intermittent effect from the weather that we have. If we have just so much rain, we don't expect the solar energy to operate the grid. So there's an interchange between the two systems, the power generation and the solar renewable energy generation that we are still developing at this point in time.
However, it was not clear in the budget documents obtained how much money was used to purchase diesel over the past 5 years. Treasury confirmed that Niue Power's budget of $1.2 million in this new financial year under other costs will also be used to purchase diesel, but there is no specific vote item specifically for the purchase of diesel for power generation. In November last year, the Director General of Infrastructure, Andre Siohane, said that Niue Power is generating about 40% of its power from solar. The Niue Energy Strategic Roadmap set the target of 80% renewable energy by year 2025. Last year, they announced that they had reached half that target, now generating around 40% renewable energy. But it is quite difficult to obtain information on whether this increasing use of renewable energy is translating to increasing savings on the purchase of diesel fuel to power the generators. Until May last year, Niue Power was managed by the government state-owned enterprise NPNC. Niue Power was then moved back to the government's Ministry of Infrastructure. Last month, the government also announced the establishment of a task force to review the operations of Niue Power. The government wished to alleviate any concerns about the arrival of the next boat, Li Long 2 Voyage 58, which is expected in on Wednesday next week. Concerns are raised because of the infection rate of COVID-19 in Fiji. The Chief of Police, Tim Wilson, told BCN News that the strict protocols for working the cargo ships are maintained and that there is no contact between the Niue boat workers and the ship's crew. The ship's crew are also required to complete COVID tests before they arrive into Niue. The crew serving this boat are the same crew who started with the boat, and there will be no crew change before arriving into Niue. The ship left Auckland, heading to Nuku'alofa, Lautoka, Suva, Pago and Apia before arriving Niue on Wednesday next week. Acting Director of Transport Lindsay Talangi has also confirmed to BCN News that all wharf and boat workers are fully vaccinated. And finally, tonight, this is the last week of the vaccine rollout. 1,184 of us took our first dose of the Pfizer vaccine a few weeks ago. After this rollout, the government will decide on when the children 12 to 15 years old will be able to take their vaccine. Niue's vaccination rate at 97% is the highest in the Pacific. The Health Department would also like to remind the public that they are also running a screening program for hepatitis B and C this month. If you haven't already done so, please go up and get yourself screened for hepatitis B and C. At the beginning of the program, the Health Department diagnosed 8 people with the disease. But that's it for BCN News tonight. Join me again on Tuesday for our bulletin in Wangahau. Until then, Good night, Monui Nipo.